Oh, okay. Thank you, Maureen. We're live on Facebook and YouTube, and so you can go in 30 seconds. In 30 seconds.
Okay. Okay. Are we at the 30-second mark? We're live. Okay. Welcome, friends. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Those of you who are joining us on YouTube, and those of us who are on retreat. I have to say I've enjoyed this weekend immensely. Um, okay. So I I don't have to listen. I only have to speak, so I don't have to wear those. Lovely. So my topic this morning. Well, first of all, my name is Maureen Hall. And rather than take our time for me to describe to you who I think I am in this moment, there is in the sidebar of our Zoom meeting, there is a description of my. But since we're live on YouTube, I should just tell y'all I am a graduate of the Community Dharma Leader program at Spirit Rock, and I am a Buddhist reverend ordained by Venerable Panawati and Panadepa as part of the Dharmacharya program. My topic this morning is seeing the best in others. And we have a tendency to see the worst in everything, not just in others. And Rick Hansen did some research looking at that, and he found that we're 5 times more likely to see the negative in things. And that is part of our survival technique, but it's overly sensitized in this day and age. That's the bad news. We tend to see the negative more than the positive. The good news is it apparently only takes 60 seconds when you see yourself thinking negatively. It takes 60 seconds. You can turn it around and see things. Just think something positive, think something beautiful is what he says. It could be a memory, it could be a plan. Spend 67 seconds thinking something wonderful, and you can retrain your brain. And they can even show it on functional MRIs and things where the grooves in the brain even change. So that's the good news, is we're not stuck with seeing the world this way. Okay, a few basic necessities we must have in order to shift our perspective, because the world has trained us to see a lot of negativity. Our survival instincts have trained us to see a lot of negativity, much more than we need to survive. So here's 4 basic necessities. Not that this is all we need, but this is a really good start. Number 1, we need right resolve, which is a firmness of purpose. Number 2, we need inner clarity. We need to be able to see truth free from obscurity, free from the veils of opinions and ideas and fixed beliefs. These are veils that we're covering truth with. The nice thing is they're only veils. We can remove them. And number 3, we need a desire to communicate effectively, especially focused on those who we love. Those whom we love provide the biggest tests, and they are our greatest training ground. So they really, when that negativity comes up, that we have that knee-jerk reaction with our closest and most intimate relationships. Uh, the nice part is that it's just a strangely wrapped gift, if we can see it in that way. What it actually is a little star, like when you walk into the mall and you look at the map to kind of figure out where you headed. And there's that little star that says, you are here. When you get triggered, there's your little star. It says, you are here. Here's where you are on the path. It's not about judging. It's not about making yourself bad. It's just about knowing where you are. Okay, and then number 4 is having empathy with those who hold views different than your own. And right now, in the place we find ourselves in time, what a beautiful training ground this is. It's testing us to our core. And so let's celebrate and do it. Okay. And so I do love using music to share Dharma. It reaches a part of us that the words alone don't reach. And so I'd like to start us and end us today with a song. This is a relatively new song. I think it's 3 weeks old. As I wade through the rubble of all that's left behind, when the darkness is subsiding and the truth has come to light, may I maintain a level of kindness in my mind that leaves no room for fear or judgment, only love for all mankind. May my heart be strong and gentle. May my words be kind and true. May my mind be still and silent. May I see my connection to you. And may the love always shine right through. I remember praying for a clear path to pursue when the gates of hell were open from the demon's point of view. Now I hear wisdom saying, just like I always knew, the darkness has no power when the light comes shining through. May my heart be strong and gentle. May my words be kind and true. May my mind be still and silent. May I see my connection to you. And may the love always shine right through. Now I sit here in this rubble, just here and now and still, listening to the fears and troubles as the shifting times fulfill a long-awaited shining promise of the coming of the light that glow on the horizon, the dissolving of the night. And may my heart be strong and gentle. May my words be kind and true. May my mind be still and silent. May I see my connection to you. And may the love always shine right through. May the love always shine right through. May the love always shine right through. Okay, and so how does one see the best in others? Um, I'm going to put on my headphones because I realized if we had any technological difficulties, I wouldn't be able to hear Sister Clear Grace. So, okay. So how do we see the best in others? Well, number one, we got to remember to do it in the moment. And even if we don't remember it in the moment, if we look back and realize how we've fallen short, that works. But eventually, we will remember it in the moment. One way we can help ourselves remember is just to make it important in our lives. Uh, and another thing that will help us to remember is knowing that thinking negatively, uh, it causes discomfort and suffering for ourselves. So really, we're practicing to bring ourselves out of suffering. Uh, the other guy doesn't necessarily even know what we're thinking. He probably doesn't. And so then the question is, have you suffered enough yet? Um, And if not, then we can go on doing what we've done forever. But if we have, then we're motivated. Okay, so one thing that I think is helpful also when we're at the looking to see the best in others is realizing that we are a pack or a pod animal. Humans are are meant to be together. We're meant to live together. We support each other and we survive because we have one another. Uh, we're also very coded to feel the emotions of the other ones of our species. And that actually, even the empathy or the compassion goes out to even members of other species. Uh, One example of where I saw that demonstrated real clearly in my own life was I had the opportunity. Here we have a university. My husband just retired as a professor from the university. And I got to go to that university for 4 years. And I got to meet a lot of our students that were from mainland China. And some of them even had their mom over here with them. And a lot of the families uh, didn't speak much English. They also are not used to driving. They do a lot of public transportation there. And so they asked me, one of my friends from mainland China asked me, she said, we want to take a van full of us up to Chicago, but none of us drive comfortably in the city. Would you be willing to come with us and drive? And of course, what a lovely opportunity. So of course I said yes. And on the drive up, they started speaking in English as much as possible, but of course it was difficult and they shifted into Mandarin relatively quickly. And the conversations were sweet and fun, and pretty soon it got really funny in there and everybody was laughing. And I could not help it. I don't speak any Mandarin except thank you, shishi. And but I couldn't help myself. I was laughing till I cried as well. And later I'm going, what are we laughing about, you guys? But you can't help it. You catch the emotions of the others you're with. You can walk into a room where there's just been a nasty fight, and even if they have their faces straight with no anger on their faces, you can feel it, the energy in the room. You can feel what's going on in the heart mind of the others in the room. Um, the another thing that's a very interesting thing about this, it's an instinct, this pod mentality. We are all one. um, we had a big yellow lab at one point, and my husband and I were watching a documentary on Vietnam, and at one point they showed the butcher of dogs for food, and our dog was laying on the floor with us and just being in the room. And when they shifted to that scene, the dog started whining, and as soon as that happened, Lucy got up and she's looking at the TV screen with shock on her face. She heard it. She understood that one of her species was being killed. And so it's not just humans. It's many of our animals, and certainly all those who have a social relationship uh, that goes with their species, like the dogs have. They live in packs, like the dolphins and the cetaceans. They live in pods, and we live in pods as well. Okay, so where do we start with this? Well, the Buddha gives us a lot of places to start. Let me see if I gathered a list for you. I counted 28 the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the Three Characteristics of Existence. We can go on, and it ends with the 37 Factors of Enlightenment, which is the richest because it contains a lot of the lists. That is a list within lists. And the Buddha was wonderful at lists. So, given all of these doorways into understanding the Dharma and understanding the truth, I say, find your doorway. Look up the Dharma lists and find what is your doorway in. I'll share with you today what my doorways, a couple of what my doorways have been. Okay, I want to keep an eye on the time so that I can end at the appropriate time. So I will do that. So one thing that that we are blessed with is this human body, which is our training ground. And then our relationships are our tests. So this is the classroom. That's the test that tells me how much of it did I learn. And so we are the training wheels here. The extent to which we can be forgiving, non-judgmental, compassionate, and caring with our own selves, that's the extent to which we can be authentically that way in the outer world with others. So we learn to do it here. So what's the self-talk about your own self? That's a good place to look. Okay. What I'd like you to do right now, if you've got a pencil and paper handy, write it down. If not, just do it in your mind, but take just a moment here. Close your eyes. And I'm going to ask you to write down either on the paper, if you're doing this on paper, or to write it down on the just the back of the eyelids as you're contemplating these questions. Think about a situation in which you were thinking or dealing with frustration, anger, any of the afflictive emotions, fear, a condemning attitude, judgment. Okay, so as you think about that, describe that to yourself. Just describe it to your own self. What were you feeling? What were you thinking? What was the situation there? Take just a moment. Okay, now my question. I hope I gave you enough time to at least think it through. But my question is, when you describe that situation to yourself, is there an I? Is there a me? Is there a mine? Are those words in the description? If yes, then selfing is going on. As long as we're approaching this thing from a clinging to a self, a solid, separate self, there's always going to be an other over there, and there's always going to be conflict. And therefore, letting those words, when you're looking at your self-talk, letting the words I, me, mine be like flashing red lights that say, you are here. This is what's happening right now. Selfing. I'd like to give you my little definition of selfing. When you consciously or unconsciously believe or act as though you personally are the center of the universe, the most important one in the room, your expectations and desires are the ones that deserve the most attention. That's the selfing. We all have that part, that ego self, that mind-made sense of me. We've all got one. How did we get this way? We were not born with that. We did not have a self-identity as an infant, that innocent child. Modern psychology uses the term inner child, and Jung actually placed this child as on his list of archetypes as one of representation of the milestone of individuation. The principle of individuation describes the manner in which a thing is identified as or distinguished from other things. So this baby comes into the world with no sense of a separate self. And then the individuation happens along with the conditioning as they learn to know this world. They develop a mind-made sense of self. Now, I don't like that definition of the inner child. I think that they might be, and if you're just looking through a magnifying glass, that might be a very useful psychological definition for the inner child and could be useful to therapists and counselors. However, I would invite you to have a new definition of it. What if we allowed the inner child to be that aspect of it that got covered up with the veils of conditioning? What about if that inner child is that innocent, uh, like a very young child comes in with that beginner's mind, that sense of innocence, that sense of wonder and curiosity, before life solidifies into a concrete sense of self, beliefs and fixed ideas that become the carnival funhouse mirror that that image and illusion of a separate self that we actually believe ourselves to be until we don't anymore. No longer are we free to investigate the world as it is because our inner child has then been covered up with veil after veil of conditioning. And when we invite ourselves to come back to that inner state, we are coming back to a state of innocence, no longer from the ignorance of youth, but now from the wisdom of experience and investigation. And the end, seeing that we are one with it all. This is a really a beautiful place to be coming from. Once we see we're one with it all, it really changes how we are in the world. Just as your cells, your blood, your muscle, your bones, they're all part of this ecosystem we call the body. We call it me. But these are all individuals. If you take blood cells and you take the whole sample and you ship it off to the lab 1,000 miles from where you live, when they put that under the microscope, this is a full, not just a serum, but with the cells, those little cells are still alive in there. And they're 1,000 miles from the body that produced them. They are not me. They are their own little individual cells. Same thing is true if you put muscle tissue or bone tissue in petri dishes with the solutions that will feed them. They will live apart from the body that made them. So we are not this body. We're something very different than that. Just as we are as those little cells are part of this thing that I call Maureen, each one of us is a little cell on that being we call Mother Earth or Gaia. There's an amazing thing. Sister Clear Grace, if you're ready to queue up, I'm going to show y'all just a little video. It's about 6 minutes long. There's a longer one on this whole principle. This is a principle called the overview effect. The Buddha took this information that he discovered through his awakening, and he shared this stuff with us. He spoke about Indra's net and how everything is, we're all one. We're one with it all. There is no separate self. The astronauts, when they went into orbit and were able to look back at Mother Earth from a distance, this changed the way they are in the world. And this little video, there's a 21-minute video that I will put in the chat box. So you can look back at it and maybe watch it on your own. It's got more interviews with the astronauts and sharing their shift. This one is talking about a program that wants to send creative people, artists, writers, songwriters, out into space to see if that shift would change the art and the way the artists perform. So that's the one we'll watch today. Sister Clear Grace, shall we go? I have no sound right now. Do the rest of you have sound? Ah, I think I hear something.
The giant rocket SpaceX is developing. Not only that, but Miyazawa is planning to give tickets for the ride to inspiring artists from all over the world who will collaborate on a project he's calling Dear Moon. It could be launched as early as 2023, although it'll probably be later than that. That's one complicated art project, even taking it at face value. But if astronauts' previous experiences are any indication, this trip might change those artists in a profound, fundamental way. It's called the overview effect, a major shift in awareness that happens to some astronauts when they see the Earth from space. We're only just starting to get an idea of how that shift affects people's thoughts and behaviors, but it could teach us a lot about a part of the human psyche that we don't often get insights into. The overview effect was first reported during the 1968 Apollo 8 mission, which orbited the moon, although it wasn't named until nearly 20 years later. According to astronauts, it happens when you see the whole world hanging there in the void of space. It gives you an overwhelming awareness of the way the world operates. Apparently, you gain a deep appreciation for the beauty and fragility of the planet, as well as the pettiness of human conflict and meaninglessness of geographical borders, among other things. But it's more than just acknowledging the beauty of the view from way up there, or even the complexities of humans as a species. Astronauts have been quoted as saying that the overview effect made them feel more connected to the planet and everyone living on it. That all of a sudden, when they looked back at the Earth, they could clearly appreciate they were part of something bigger. Many are profoundly psychologically changed by the experience and come home determined to make a difference. I'm sure we can all think of a few people we might like to experience this overview effect. But it's only in the last decade or so that psychologists have begun to look into what exactly causes this massive cognitive shift, and whether it's something humans can only experience in space, or if we can recreate something similar here on Earth. In a 2016 paper published in the journal Psychology of Consciousness, researchers analyzed astronauts' firsthand accounts of their experiences with the overview effect. When the team started thinking about existing psychological theories and frameworks from research here on Earth that might explain the phenomenon, they suggested that it might be the work of two factors combined. First, there's the psychological experience of awe. And second, there's self-transcendence, a term that usually refers to the highest level of human consciousness, how we relate to the rest of our species and the rest of the universe. Those are both things people experience on Earth too, but often when they show up in psychological research, it's in the context of religious experiences. You can see why both the overview effect and religious experiences might cause similar shifts in someone's understanding of the universe and their place in it. But you can't just induce a religious experience in someone. And even if you could, most people probably wouldn't want that, regardless of their personal beliefs. Still, there's something to be said for helping people feel more at one with the universe and part of something bigger than themselves. And it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to some spiritual awakening. In some of the most recent research into the overview effect, psychologists looked into how seeing the Earth from space affects astronauts' feelings of spirituality. And it turns out the overview effect doesn't seem to cause spiritual changes in astronauts. When the research team asked astronauts to rate the changes they experienced as a result of being in space, spirituality was the least changed of all the measured factors. Instead, the most prominent changes were humanistic, feelings rooted in the value of human welfare, governed more by practical and critical thinking than by belief in a higher power. Now, it's worth noting that many of these astronauts already had very high feelings of spirituality, which might be why those feelings didn't change much. Still, the results suggest that even though this combination of awe and self-transcendence is usually caused by religious experiences for those stuck here on Earth, it may not have to be. That could mean it's possible to take advantage of the overview effect in a therapeutic sense. The research hasn't gotten that far yet, but there's a lot of potential here. Experiencing these feelings on a grand scale can alter what's known as a self-schema, a long-lasting, stable system of memories, beliefs, and knowledge that you hold about yourself. When something comes along and challenges your place in the world, your brain will either reject the challenge or accommodate the new knowledge by changing your self-schema. Adjusting a self-schema can have a massive effect on someone's identity and behavior, and it's often emphasized in certain types of talk therapy. In cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, often the goal is to change unhelpful beliefs about the self, like I am inherently bad, in favor of more positive, beneficial thoughts and behaviors. It's no surprise then that astronauts who accommodate the newfound feeling that they're part of a huge, complex, fragile ecosystem suddenly feel motivated to make it a better place. And by learning more about the overview effect and the emotions associated with it, we might be able to use what we've learned from sending humans to space to help people on Earth develop similarly profound and healthier understandings of themselves. Either way, those artists participating in the Dear Moon project may well come back with a very different view of their place in the world and might create some very different work as a result. Thanks for watching this episode of SciShow Space. We talk a lot about understanding the universe on this channel, but the lens through which we view it can be just as important. So if you're interested in learning about other strange inner workings of the human brain, not just the ones that happen to people in space, you might want to check out our sister channel, SciShow Psych.
Yeah. Thank you, Sister Grace. Okay, so that to me was when I discovered the overview effect. That was an amazing piece that walks hand in hand with what the Buddha taught us as far as there being no separate self. That's such an important part of being able to see the best in others, because once we realize that there really isn't such a thing as an other. I mean, when we take a look around the room with those who are sitting in, and we think there might be 4 of us in this room because there's 4 human bodies here, but in the essence of Indra's net and also the overview effect, we realize, no, we're all in this together. We're all part of the same, we're all cells in this same body. And right now, humanity is undergoing an autoimmune disease. We are out there killing our fellow cells. We are rheumatoid arthritis in the body of humanity in a big way. And so how do we get past that? Well, right now, medicine doesn't even know how to work with the autoimmune diseases. What it does is it tries to break the immune system or dull the immune system. Actually, the Buddha told us waking up to what is true will break that illusion of a separate self. And then there's really nothing to fight. We can be here with what is without making it a problem. So, okay, so there's some interesting things to think about. And before I leave, I will put that link in the chat box for those of us who are on Zoom, so you can take a look at it. But just Google the overview effect on YouTube, you'll find it. And the 21-minute one is the one that I highly recommend because you can feel the heart of the astronauts. One of them even talks about a social movement he started after getting back because of the insight he received in seeing that we're all one. Okay, so the Buddha said there's well, like I said, there's all those doorways, but one that I want to draw your attention to is the 5 things that lead to awakening. Number 1, admirable friends. Number 2, sila, which is the Pali word for morality or virtue. Number 3, hearing the Dharma. Number 4, exertion, skillful effort in abandoning the unskillful qualities and cultivating the skillful ones. And number 5, awareness of impermanence, that insight into impermanence. will definitely lead us to awakening. So these are 5 different things out of the many that the Buddha offered. I'd like to draw our attention to number 2, the Sila practice. And one of the places that I find the Sila practice, that I find it works best for me, is looking at the Brahma Viharas. That's a Pali word that means the sublime abodes or the heavenly abodes. I want to talk a little bit about the near enemy as well as the far enemy. The near enemy is a quality that can masquerade as the original one, but it's not the original. And the far enemy is exactly what it sounds like, the opposite. And so here are the 4 Brahma Viharas. We have loving kindness. It's called metta in Pali. We have compassion, or karuna in Pali. We have empathetic joy, or mudita. And we have equanimity. And the loving kindness is kind of the meat of this thing, because the compassion is kind of meeting the suffering of others with loving kindness. And the mudita, or empathetic joy, is kind of like meeting the joy of others with loving kindness. And so this loving kindness is a very, very useful tool. Get it in your bag if it's not there already. So the far enemy of loving kindness, of course, is hatred. But and not many of us are stuck in active hatred. But what about that near enemy? The near enemy is attachment. Who of us is not stuck in the near enemy of loving kindness? At least on some level with something. We all have attachments that we haven't released yet. So let's go to compassion. The far enemy of compassion is cruelty. And although most of us do not consciously indulge in cruelty, the near enemy is pity, where we look at that other person's situation. Oh, that poor person. I'm so glad it's not me. I'm so glad it's not my family. That pity is the near enemy of compassion. The near enemy of the sympathetic or empathetic joy is that joy in the good fortune of others. That near enemy is, well, the far enemy is obvious. It's jealousy or envy. But that near enemy is the comparing mind. We've all been there. Where am I? He's so much better than me at. She's so much better. I'm better than her at this. Yeah, that comparing mind, that thing is a definite judgment builder. Whatever we practice continually, we get better at. Anybody who plays a musical instrument or is a writer, we all know that. What we practice, we get better at. If we are practicing comparing ourselves to others, insincerity is another form of the near enemy of the mudita practice. We might have a little joy in the good fortune of others because it's my team or my family or my, there you go, there's your red flag, your flashing neon, my word says that's where we are on the path. Doesn't mean we're bad, it doesn't have to be a problem, it's just a wake-up call. And okay, so those are the 4 Brahma Viharas. Look at those near enemies, see where they show up in your life. I mean, the far enemy, it's going to be real obvious when it shows up. We're uncomfortable as all get out, hating, feeling, being cruel. We're uncomfortable with the far enemy. Something in us will tell us that. But those near enemies, they're sneaky guys. They come in through the back door and they can have you by the throat and choking before you even think to look. And so watch for the near enemies of the Brahma Viharas. Another thing that we can do, I'll give you a few more of the things that have worked well for me, little tools to stick in your tool bag. The choice of companions. We tend to pick up the traits of those that we hang around with. I have a sister-in-law who's from New Zealand. I cannot spend more than 2 hours with that woman before I get a New Zealand accent. We pick up the traits of those that we hang with. So watch your choice of companions. Make sure you're hanging with folks that have qualities that you would like to rub off on you. Then take a look at your choice of entertainment. What books are you reading? What TV shows are you watching? What movies are you watching? And then why? I can remember a time when Venerable Panawati was watching some show that just seemed so very earthly to me. Californication, that's what it was. And she was saying how she wanted to get there in time to see the show Californication. And I thought, what? Our monk is watching Californication? And this is, I don't remember, but the next Sunday in the Dharma talk, there was something that had been on that show that was clear dukkha, and it fit perfectly with her Dharma talk. This woman was watching this show, not because it fed some animal desires in her, but because it gave her a clear view of dukkha and how she might be able to point it out to the rest of us. So watch your motivations too, not just what you're doing, but why are you doing that? Okay, and then there's the number 4 in my list is the inquiry into the nature of thought. This takes many, many things. If you want to go deep into the inquiry around the nature of thought and mind, I highly recommend the book. The Venerables have been teaching a Tuesday class from a book called Beyond the Himalayas. This book is filled with that really deep inquiry stuff. But let's take something that we can do right now. Inquiry into the nature of my thoughts in this moment. And it's simple, it's easy, it's 3 words. Is it wholesome? Is it unwholesome? Or is it neutral? Very few things are neutral, I find. They always have a tinge of this or a tinge of that. And some things might be a hybrid where there's a wholesome component to it, but there's also an unwholesome component. Look directly. Observe your own thoughts. Make a habit of it. Always asking yourself, is it wholesome? Is it unwholesome? Or is it neutral? Okay, let's take a look. Okay, number 5 is another thing to remember. This is so important to remember that you always have a choice. You do not have a choice necessarily, and often you don't have a choice about what happens, what comes across your radar, what happens in your daily life. Those things, we sometimes can affect them in some way. Other times, we have no control there. We cannot make it different. The folks who were in Auschwitz had no control over their situation. And yet, I'm doing a senior moment, I can't remember, Frankel wrote that book, and he talked about the ones who came out of the whole situation there in Germany, that came out with a certain element of wholeness, were the ones who, when the bread was not enough to go around, they would break it up and share it with others. They made the best of the situation they found themselves in, and didn't get beaten down by that. If they can do that in that situation, if Frankel and some of his friends were able to pull that off in that situation, I find that so very encouraging, because it says, our mind tells us, oh no, I can't take this. This is unendurable, unacceptable. All those words will run through our minds. That's just the thinking mind telling you its opinions, its beliefs, and its thoughts, none of which are true. You can endure so much more than you thought you could. My biggest proof of that was when my 7-year-old daughter drowned. Someone had said you would live through the loss of a child. I would have thought, no way in hell. And but the truth is, not only did I live through it, but it opened a whole new dimension for me, where I realized I could feel her presence out of the body. And I knew she is not gone. She did not cease to exist. She just put on her invisibility cloak, for the Harry Potter fans in the group. And what it did for me is it opened things up. It allowed me to feel the deepest suffering I have, or I guess I should say the deepest pain I have ever felt. But then that recognition of her free from the human condition, free from the world of samsara, and feeling her presence free. That was, I cannot describe a greater joy that I've ever felt in my life. And so the very same situation was the worst event or experience of my life and the most beautiful, beloved, and gift to the world experience of my life. It's really in our perspective, friends. It's in our perspective. Okay, so we'd like to use this little quote from the Dhammapada just because it's my most favorite quote, I think, and where he says, and it's the first two little verses, mind precedes all mental states. Mind is their chief. They are all mind wrought. If with an impure mind a person speaks and acts, suffering follows him like the wheel that follows the foot of the ox. Mind precedes all mental states. Mind is their chief. They are all mind wrought. If with a pure mind a person speaks and acts, happiness follows him like his never departing shadow. This is so encouraging, so encouraging. So catching the mind when it's making that fearful prediction or that judgmental thought that's coming through the mind, those mean words that you're thinking about saying, catching those just as quick as we can, and knowing that to begin with, we're practicing, right? You're not going to sit at that piano and whip out Beethoven on the first try. You're going to play scales for a long time, and then you're going to do Mary Had a Little Lamb and all of those other things that seem so small and immature. We want to play the symphony or the Mozart, but it takes all that foundational work to be able to do this. And so not making it a problem. Don't make it a problem. Your humanity, your shortcomings, we all got them. If this world, if we were perfect, this is not a showcase. This is a workshop. We're not here to display perfections. We're here to develop an awareness of truth. We actually are that truth in our essence. And in the book Beyond the Himalayas, our friend Murdo McDonald Bain says, in the final analysis, in the essence, what we really are is love. That's what we are. Panadeepa told me that several years ago when I went to talk to him about my inability to love an unlovable one in my life. And he said, there's your problem, Maureen. He says, you're thinking of love as something you do. He says, it's not. That's not what it is. Love is not something you do. Love is something you are. And when you are the love, anything that comes through your world will be washed in that love. And this is the very same principle that the Buddha was talking about. Okay, so catch ourselves in that moment when the negative thought is coming up, and recognize that you're headed down the wrong path and reroute, just like your GPS does. When you take a wrong turn, it reroutes you and it gives you another road. Reroute. What are your rerouting tools? Here's two that have worked beautifully for me. When I catch myself judging or in that negative place, I will either use let it go, Maureen, let it go, and take a deep breath and just breathe it out. Sounds almost Tonglen-esque in a way because I'm just breathing out that negativity that was in me. And then immediately changing my thought, like Rick Hansen talks about, to something positive. And so that's one mantra. My other mantra, which I use much more these days, and I love it, is, because there's a little humor in it, is I see you, Mara. And if y'all remember back when when the Buddha was in that night of his awakening, sitting under the Bodhi tree, and Mara, the insistent self, the demon, basically, that kept coming to him and tempting him in every way it could. And finally, he is staying in his awakened place, and Mara, as a last resort, says, "What gives you the idea that you deserve awakening. And the Buddha reached down and he touched Mother Earth and he says, the earth is my witness. The earth is your witness. So when you see Mara arising in your mind, just look him in the eyes and say, I see you, Mara. He'll crumble, just like those PowerPoint things where there's one of the PowerPoints where at a certain point it all breaks into little pixels and then there's another scene behind it. If you look Mara in the eyes and tell him, I see you, Mara, he will crumble and you will chuckle. Okay. And so our time is growing very short. Success comes with practice. I cannot say that enough. Success comes with practice. And so I know I can't say it enough. So success comes with practice. You get the idea. All right. And so I'm going to, I would like to just offer this last quote here from the author of the Beyond the Himalayas, where he says, I won't read you the entire thing, but this is the little phrase that really sticks with me. He says, you are the world. There is no isolation. The isolation is created only in man's mind. It is the great illusion. The separate self. That's what he's talking about. The separate self is the great illusion. There is, in the final analysis, there is no separate self. And so I'm going to close up today for y'all with another song. And this song is one written by a woman by the name of Kirtana. I love this song. I invite you to, rather than listening to it like as a song, I invite you to just kind of kick back, close your eyes, and feel into the truth of these lyrics. They're very powerful. And the song is called Who You Really Are. Could there be more than this life we call mine, than a journey through space, or a storyline? More to life than the body can sense, than the mind can conclude from experience. Does who we are begin with breath, depend on form, or end with death? Strip away these roles, these names, and tell me what remains. Who you really are. Who you really are. We measure success by the things we accrue, or the bonds that we form, or the deeds we do. These too shall pass, hard as we try to hold on to form. Form must die. Inherent in this dance of form is a chance to see what's yet unborn. The choice to throw this chance away and be caught up in the play of who we think we are, who we think we are. This is your lifetime. It could end at any time. Where's your attention? Where is your prayer? Where is your song? Fortunately, comes a call to be free from this burden of bondage, this identity, to awake from the dream and finally realize the truth of one's being before the body dies. So before the final scene is cast, see the screen on which it's passed. See what's seeing this me and you, and then you will see who you really are, who you really are, who we really are. Thank you so much, friends. This has been a delight being with you this morning and being able to share some of this Dharma.